Hello everyone and welcome back to the Magnus Invitational. We are back at round 4 and it's Magnus Carlsen versus Maxime Vachier Lagrave. Really an exciting game featuring probably a never before seen opening. Before we check it out, if you still haven't joined the tournament, both of the tournaments that we're going to cover today, not cover, but I will be streaming them, hopefully, if you know the tournament doesn't last for too long. But the links are in the description below. First thing you're gonna see, so the links to the both tournaments are there. So do join. We're gonna have a lot of fun. Now, that being said, let's check out the game. Magnus opens with e4, and of course we have c5 by Maxime, going for his Sicilian, hopefully a Najdorf, knight f3, d6, d4, captures, and now knight to f6. And here, usually, pretty much knight to c3, a6 is an instant, but here Magnus plays bishop to c4, and it's such a weird move as it hangs the e4 pawn. And it's quite interesting. Maxime looked at it for quite a few seconds, and in the end he just played e6. He declined the pawn, and it's very interesting. If you capture the pawn, what happens? You get queen to h5, of course threatening to capture on f7. The bishop also supports that. e6 blocking the bishop, and now bishop to b5 check. And here it's just complete madness. If you block with the knight, then just knight captures here. Really just beautiful stuff. And of course, if you block with the bishop, doesn't really matter. Still knight captures, attacks the queen, and it's just a whole mess of a position. And it could be that Carlsen just prepared this to avoid the Najdorf, but there's also this fantasy chess league going on, and there are like these questions that will we see a Najdorf on the board. So maybe Magnus just also plays the fantasy chess league, and then he just played bishop to c4 to avoid the Najdorf, not to lose any points there. So who knows? Anything is possible. But okay, Maxime ignores the pawn with e6. We have castles here. And the bishop to e7. And now there are a few games in the database that actually reach this position, and but the move Magnus plays is a new one. Here he just goes back, bishop to d3, now guards the pawn, and it is as of move 7 that we have a completely new game. Knight to c6 challenges the knight, and Magnus captures it. Knight captures, we have pawn captures, and now c4, gaining full control of the d5 square, the so-called Marozzi bind. We have castles by black, and now knight to c3. We have e5, and now comes bishop to e3. We have bishop to e6, both players just continue development, and the queen to e2 now, with more support to the c4 pawn. The rooks are now connected. We have knight to d7, probably with the idea of trading off the bishops here, but also maybe even f5 in the future is an idea. We have rook f to d1. This will put pressure on the d6 pawn if the bishop ever moves from e7. And now queen to c7. Maxime also develops the queen, connects the rooks, and b4 now. Now Magnus is ready to start pushing on the queen side, and Maxime immediately challenges it. We have a5, a3, b captures, a captures, and now rook captures on a1. Trading off a pair of rooks, we have rook to b8, going after the b4 pawn, and now rook to b1. And the Maxime goes knight to f6, which will support the push of the pawn to d5. Magnus goes h3, and here you have to decide whether you push d5 or not. It's just the thing in the Sicilian defense. If you can push d5 and you're okay, then you're okay. If you're not okay, then you're not. So here Maxime just pushes it, and here we have a nice capture fest in the center. Captures. We have e captures, knight captures, and everything just gets captured off. And now Magnus, as he does have the bishop pair slicing over to the queen side, he starts pushing his passed pawn. So the material is completely equal, both players with the bishop pair, but Magnus does have the passed b pawn, which he now of course hopes to push forward. We have e4 now attacking Carlsen's bishop here, but now Magnus doesn't react to this by moving the bishop, but rather by attacking Maxime's bishop here. And the problem with moving the bishop, for example, bishop to a8, is that now b6 is indeed very strong. After queen to c6, you're going to get bishop to a6, and well, your own pawn is now just blocking your attack here, and this pawn is just extremely strong. It would be very hard to hold this. So instead, Maxime went for e captures on d3, Carlsen captured on d5, and now rook to d8, attacking the queen and of course putting the rook behind the passed pawn. Maxime now also wants to push the passed pawn. Queen e4, again with still keeping an eye on the pawn and on the bishop here. And now, while you can push d2 right away, Magnus will just attack it with rook to d1, so not really gaining anything there. So instead we have bishop to f8 first, not allowing the bishop to remain a target here, but now Magnus goes b6, attacks the queen. We have queen to c2, attacking the rook now, and rook to c1 now, attacking Maxime's queen. And here both of them were extremely low on time, and Maxime played queen to b3 here. Queen to b2 is a bit more precise, because queen to b3 allows a certain move. So even feel free to pause the video here and try to find this move, as it does win the game for Magnus, while I give you a couple of seconds. So those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting the move the world champion missed. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's b7. And now, well, what do you do here? Rook to b8, you now go after the pawn. The pawn does seem to be lost on the next move, but the idea is rook to c8, and this is how white prevails. Now you're just threatening to pick up the rook, so queen captures on b7, but now you capture the queen, and after rook captures, now just bishop here, and you're threatening checkmate, so black doesn't have time to start pushing the pawn. You have to make some room for your king, but now just rook captures with check, king here, and rook to d8 keeps an eye on the passed pawn, and it's just game over for Maxime. However, Magnus missed this idea. He thought that if he pushes the pawn to b7, that black will just be able to grab it, and instead he went queen to f3. And here now it's Maxime who pushes the pawn. d2, we have rook to d1, the rook nicely defended by the queen, and now h6, getting rid of some back rank weaknesses. And here Magnus was like 3 minutes on the clock, Maxime was around 2 minutes on the clock. So finally b7, but now rook to b8, and now it's a bit different, as you don't really have any threats. So Magnus just captured the d2 pawn, and Maxime captured the b7 pawn, and now it's a bit different. Now it's exact same material with both players with 3 pawns on the king side. So Magnus started putting his pawns on light squares, as he does have a light square bishop. We have rook to b8 and now king to g2, slowly improving the position. Rook to e8 and now rook to d7, going after f7. The black king queen still defends it though. We have queen to e6, and now Magnus just offers a queen trade. We have captures, and the g6 now. Maxime also preparing to put some pawns on light squares. h4 and now bishop to g7, and here h5. We have g5, and definitely making some progress here, as those pawns are now on dark squares, which makes them targets. However, there's just no way to reach them. King f3, we have bishop to f6, and now king to e2. We have king to g7, king to d3 now, and rook to a8 by Maxime. We have f4 by Carlsen, and now g captures. We have bishop captures and rook to a3 check. King e4, so slowly but surely making progress. Rook to a6, and now king to f5. Maxime just goes back with the bishop, and now rook to b5, attacking the bishop. And here we have rook to f6 check by Maxime. King to e4, and now rook to e6 check once again. And here Magnus just repeats. If you do something else, then just bishop goes back, but here Magnus repeats, and Maxime also repeats, and here we have a nice draw by repetition of moves. So it was in this position that the players agreed to a draw. So really wild game, incredible opening in game 1. This bishop to c4 move by Carlsen, really impressive stuff. You know, we might be seeing a lot of these in Bullet and Blitz games online, just giving up this e4 pawn. It was this one moment where he had the chance, where he could have gone for it if b7 was played, but he missed it, and then the game ended in a draw. So that's round 1 for you. I do hope you enjoyed that. Could have gone either way, but it was mostly Magnus in control for the entire game. But yeah, great defensive ideas by Maxime, and in the end, he was able to draw the game. So yeah, once again, I do hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Frank Truslow, Seth Rivers, Paul R. Henson, Antonio Vecchio, and Robert Voigtlanda for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the Magnus Invitational until it finishes. So thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day, and join the tournaments in the description below. See you soon.